Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to the 6th episode of our online series of workshops hosted by Digital HealthWorks. So I'm really excited for this one today because we're going to be talking to a good friend of ours, Paul from Alpha-Sophia, as our guest speaker. And Daniel and I are going to be talking and taking you through this presentation on selling in the American medical market. So just to give you a little bit of a reminder, the format of these workshops is meant to be casual. So we'd really like to encourage you to post any questions you have in the chat. And then at the end during our Q&A session, please feel free to unmute, turn on your camera and join into the discussion and ask us any questions. So that's really the aim of the setup today. For those of you who aren't familiar, so Digital HealthWorks is a commercialization agency. We work with digital health and MedTech ventures and help them go to markets, mostly in Europe and the US. So we have a team based out of Boston, Berlin, and Lisbon, and focus on 3 core areas of our expertise, which are regulatory, market access, and sales. So today we're going to be really covering the sales aspect of things. So in case you don't know, so my name's Romy Benninga. I am a market access and MedTech consultant here with Digital HealthWorks. I've been in the industry for about 7 years in diagnostics and various different medical devices. And I'm going to be joined today by Daniel Young. So Daniel, if you want to give a little intro.
Yeah, hi, Lou. I'm Daniel Young, founder of Digital HealthWorks, and I have been involved in digital health for quite some time. And really the genesis of Digital HealthWorks came about witnessing the struggles that many startups have had with either regulatory or go-to-market. And so that's really now our mission. And so I'm really happy to be introducing Paul, who I met about a year or so ago, who had a really compelling platform addressing the needs of startups and ventures going into the U.S. healthcare space and how they can approach the market. So I think without further ado, Paul, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Daniel. First of all, it's already been a year, quite some long time. Feels much shorter because time passes so fast. So my name is Paul, and I'm the founder of a company called Alpha-Sophia. We are a startup, approximately 1.5 years old, and what we've built is a commercial intelligence platform for the US healthcare market. So what does that mean? We basically are a data and software company, and we've built a platform which brings together data from all sorts of sources from the healthcare market to provide digital health companies, but also MedTech companies with a well-rounded picture about their potential customers. So in the end, who are the providers, the physicians, the surgeons who are a good fit to be using their products. We bring that together in a way that we allow those companies to be really targeted in their approach. So use a multitude of different dimensions to narrow down the set of, 3 million physicians in the country down to the ones who are actually a good fit. People always ask me, why did we actually come up with that question and with that company and that solution? The main reason for this really is that when I helped incubate another MedTech company here in Germany, at some point we needed some data on potential customers, and we went to one of the larger incumbent players in the market and tried to get a quote for in-depth market insights. And we're quite shocked to find out that we would need to spend the equivalent of a brand new car to acquire that Excel sheet of data. So when I and my co-founder Robin and Isabel looked at solutions to build, we remember that point in time, and we're looking into that market and whether it would be possible to build a solution which is really powerful and brings those insights to light, but at the same time comes at an accessible and reasonable price point, which is also within the realm of smaller startups and also MedTech SMBs and so on. So this is a little bit the origin story of the company and the solution we've been built.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. I mean, as someone who only discovered commercial intelligence platforms last year, I can really say it's completely changed the way that we're able to provide very tangible value for our customers. So very excited to go through this with you. So I'd like to give you the floor, Paul, and I think you wanted to take us through a demo.
Sure, let's do that. I mean, as you're mentioning, I think it's always the best. I mean, the best way to understand what we've actually built is seeing a quick demo, because it's much more lively than just talking about different data points. Let me quickly share my screen to do that, and I'm directly jumping into one of the main screens of that solution. I don't know, can you see my screen now? Does it work?
Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. Quickly move that out of the window. Perfect. So what we are seeing now is the treasure trove of this, or the central heart of our platform, which is the search screen. And what we see here is basically, in the end, a list or database of currently 2.9 million healthcare providers in the country, spread across states. And on the left-hand side, we have a lot of different filtering dimensions, which we can then use to narrow down that list to a target list that could be a good fit for the solution or the product I'm trying to market as a digital health or MedTech company. So what I can do here, currently there are 2.9 million people, but then I can start and say, okay, I might only be interested in a certain specialty, for example. So let's assume you've developed a new orthopedic implant. You might only want to talk to orthopedic surgeons. And then you can go in here and then just put in orthopedic surgery physicians. And bang, you have narrowed down that list from 2.9 million people to 29,000 people, and can have a quick look how they are spread across the country. And then you can go further and say, okay, actually, I might only want to target people in Texas in the beginning, for example. You do that, and you only end up with the surgeons who are located in Texas. Or actually, it took state license, so the ones who are licensed in Texas, but you can also look at the ones who are located in Texas, or can even do that at a state or zip code level. That's another way of narrowing down further. And then you could also go another path and say, actually, I'm looking for key opinion leaders who are part of a certain medical society, or providers who are conducting certain diagnoses which are in correlation with my product, or who are performing certain procedures, prescribing certain medications. But you can also do stuff like, okay, maybe I'm interested in general in orthopedic surgeons, but one of my main competitors is, for example, Stryker. So I could be looking at all of those orthopedic surgeons and then say, but let's exclude everyone who has received payments from Stryker in the past. So now I've excluded all of them, and we are down from 29,000 to only 11,000 orthopedic surgeons who have never received any payments from Stryker in the past. And then you could go further and say, actually, I want to run, I don't know, a digital campaign on LinkedIn. So let's only look at the ones who have a LinkedIn profile, and who do conduct research. So let's look at only the ones where we have publication data available, and so on. And you can go further down and down, look at seniority, agenda, for whom we have contact data information, where they went to medical school, did they have fellowships or residencies, whether they're performing in telehealth, and so on. So it's quite comprehensive. And when you have done that, at some point, you might want to save people to a lead list, and you can create a lead list and save people to that lead list, and then also export data to another CRM system, like, for example, Salesforce or HubSpot. But you can always also jump into all of those 2.9 million providers. And what we've done, we've basically put together our profile pages or commercial battle cards on all those 2.9 million people, which can prepare your marketing and sales force to target those providers in a more specific and meaningful manner. So, for example, if we look at Richard here, we might want to jump into his profile, and then directly see a well-rounded overview about him. And as I mentioned, you can do that on all the people in here. And then here you see the top CPT codes they are performing, how much they're charging for that. We have that for Medicare, but also in our enterprise version for all payer claims, where we are covering 80 to 90% of the whole healthcare markets of all medical bills being processed in the US. You can see the financial relationships with an eye glimpse. So the top companies they are working with, the top products they've been received funding for, which gives you an idea of what type of solution they might be using, where they went to medical school, with which organization they're affiliated, where they're located, and so on. And then, of course, you can drill down even deeper by going into those deep dive sections. For example, we look for people who where we have publication data available, so we can quickly see the publications he's been performing, or where he did his residency. We could also dive deeper into the companies he's been working with. So he's received some payments from several companies, but you see most of them were smaller values, probably just some food and beverage, so not really significant. But there are other providers where this gives you a better idea of who they are and what they do. So you could even let's go into the product section, for example, go in here and look at all the different products they've been paid for by, and then you can go and actually see, okay, actually I might be interested in that product because it's a competing product of my solution. So let's jump back and now look for all the different providers who've been paid in relation to that product. So basically, by using this functionality as an example, you could piggyback on the targeting of your competitors and look at who they are targeting, and then suddenly see the 13,000 HCPs who've been paid by this company in relation to that product in the past. And the ways you can combine all those different filtering functionalities here, and you can cross select, you can say, show me all people of this profession who are not doing this at the same time, and so on, gives you a billion different options of finding really narrow target sets of providers who you might want to reach out to via your marketing team, but also via your sales team, or you could be leveraging a distributor and use this tool to better steer this distributor and give them targets who to reach out to and who to meet. Other of our clients are also using the solution as a recruiting tool. So we do have some hospitals in the US using this to find the right physicians to recruit, or other companies of ours are using it for clinical trial recruiting, for example, and so on. So it's quite diverse. The use case always is find the right providers in the US for your solution, and then secondly, get really deep insights on them to have a meaningful conversation with them and get in touch with them.
I think, Paul, I just wanted to jump back in on when you were giving that example. Could you talk a little bit more about the difference between the Medicare claims and the all-payer claims? Because I think that's a really interesting difference that that can make a big difference for people researching the market. Can you touch on that more?
That's a really good question. In the end, in every healthcare market and also in the US, as we know, you have a payer mix, basically who's paying for the healthcare expenses. And Medicare, of course, being a government program which is paying for medical expenses, but it's only used or only offered to people over the age of 65. So you definitely have a skew in this data towards diseases who are more prevalent in this population. So for some companies, that might work really well if you're building devices or solutions for that population. But then again, if you're building a device for a cesarean section, for example, which is not really prevalent in the age group above 65, that might not give you the insights you might need. And for that, we have that on top offering in our platform where we incorporate all payer claims data. So what does that mean? We're basically bringing together data from all sorts of payer groups, from Medicare, Medicaid, but also commercial and private insurances, and so on. And aggregating that in one data set, which approximately makes up 80 to 90% of all medical claims. So all medical invoices being processed in the US. So it's a really comprehensive data set. We're talking about many gigabytes of data every quarter that are fed into that.
Thank you.
So, one of the examples, Paul, that I wanted to just draw some attention to was a project that I was working on more than a few years ago, having to do with pulmonology. And one of the interesting questions we were looking at were pulmonologists that were relying on telemedicine or remote patient monitoring, and really being able to bracket down into that to figure out who are the thought leaders on there. From my understanding with your platform, you've got all the tools there to be able to really articulate a focused strategy and trying to identify not just the aggregate kind of cohort of people that are using a technology, but that you could really dissect it and figuring out who are the most active within that cohort. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. So what we don't do at the moment, we don't have a button which says KOL, and then you see all the KOLs, because in the end, that's a normative category, right? So it depends on the company who you're looking for, what is a KOL for you. But we do have all the information, so you could be looking for people who publish a lot in a certain field, or people not KOLs in the traditional sense, but those who, I don't know, are really active on LinkedIn and so on. So you have a lot of proxies which you can combine to then find those people you're mentioning.
Yeah, because what we were looking for at that point in time, and this is one of the things for the record of what was really attractive about the platform was, when we were trying to understand, or I was trying to understand, which pulmonologists were publishing in a certain genre. I don't need to be specific about it, but I wanted to figure out, like, who are also the ones that were the most how do I dare say this, like, innovative within their applications. So, I mean, just because you're monitoring and you're a thought leader in one thing is that part, so you can filter by publishing. But then I wanted to go another step further in figuring out who is actually working with certain healthcare providers in the US that were active in remote and home care, to be specific, because the thesis of what we were working on was about how to cultivate an in-home care solution for one of the clients that we were working with. And then there you had a product that basically they were trying to roll out and use as a digital hub in the home. And our challenge back in the day was, who could we talk to that could be part of this? So I know you're talking about the structure of your data sets and all the different things that you can search, but I was hoping that maybe we could steer the conversation for the next few minutes about how you can apply this to some real world scenarios for, say, a startup that's pre-commercial, or one that's just getting going, also middle market companies and corporates. But this one solution was really, or the one experience that I had was really specific about having to dissect the market and look at varieties of different data that were spread out over all this. But then when I saw your platform, it was like everything I needed was right there. And so that was pretty cool. So I'm curious if you could do some experience shares about, smaller companies or for that matter, maybe teams within corporates that are trying to apply it in the same way.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is really spot on. It's always about finding basically the few people. Yeah, it's not. I mean, there are data providers out there where you can buy a big list of, I don't know, a list of 1 million providers, maybe with email addresses and so on, but that's not targeted. Yeah. We really aim to help our customers to narrow down to the few hundred, to the 10 people who really are a good fit for them to talk to. And the reason why this is important is, and you were mentioning startups and smaller companies, those companies usually have limited resources. Yeah? So they can't have at their stage a sales rep in every country, in every city of the country, who just walks into the same 3 hospitals every day and just talks to everyone every day. They need to be really focused in their approach to get the biggest bang for the buck they are spending, and it's on sales and marketing. So what our customers mostly use our platform for is to strategically decide which groups do I target in general, but then also within those groups, how do I cut it by product I'm selling and also sales and marketing campaign I'm running? So it might be the case that they even cut cohorts down and many sub cohorts for different marketing campaigns, where they send out different emails with different calls to action to different groups, where they engage with younger physicians rather on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and then with more experienced physicians through other channels, where they use our data to tailor the messaging they're having towards those providers to have a higher likelihood of them actually responding and engaging with that. And those are the kind of use cases we are serving. So in the end, our platform, I think, serves 2 use cases. The one is to increase the return on sales and marketing spend, and secondly, to reduce research time, where people in the past have been manually going through Google and and websites of hospitals and so on to gather some of those information we are providing in a manual way.
Yeah, that's now here's like a I don't know, like there's certain kind of like cases I want to go down because like maybe like I'm trying to think, like, besides the pulmonology example, there was another company that I remember that was very, very specialized around converting cranial MRI images into bone plates that could be surgically implanted for people that had traumatic head injuries or whatnot. Very specific technology for a very specific application. And with a tool like this, I clearly see that they could have saved a lot of time and money by focusing their attention on those that were doing these kinds of procedures over everybody else. So obviously you can get really, really deep on this stuff. But now, can we talk about maybe some use cases of where, we're leaving the startup world behind a little bit, and we're talking more like middle market companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a client that works in cardiology that makes devices, we'll say, to kind of protect the anonymity of this. And they are always looking for ways of how can they better engage cardiologists and better engage surgeons that are working with their technologies and things like that. And they are kind of have a very focused area of their products around this genre, if you would. But like how can you, with your platform, nuance, which cardiologists are doing what, which ones are going to be the more likely to be, influencing decisions, or the ones that are going to be most likely actually like using the scalpel in the operating room?
Yeah, I mean, with our solutions, we have you can search here in this box by all the different procedures which exist, and then really drill down to and see this provider is doing this and this procedure so many times per year. And this gives you a lot of information. First of all, you get a really in-depth understanding of the therapeutic profile of that provider, and you can search by procedures who are correlated to the product you're selling. Point one, and then secondly, you can get an understanding of the opportunity size behind those providers and also within areas. So those mid-market companies would often use our solution and then search for certain types of procedures they're interested in, and then cut that up by state in order to see which territories, or even by zip code or city, to see which territories have how much aggregate opportunity, and then size their territories around that so that they are equally sized in terms of territory, not just in terms of land mass, for example. And then they assign those leads within those territories towards their sales teams for them to work with those or reach out to those surgeons or physicians on a regular basis. And then those reps go out there, often have their tablet with Alpha-Sophia with them, and before they walk into a hospital, sitting in the car in the parking lot in front of the hospital, they quickly check out the faces and the information about the providers who are on their list within Alpha-Sophia to then, if they walk in and maybe even accidentally meet one who could be a good target, have all the information they need to then quickly engage in a discussion which is meaningful and has a higher likelihood of those providers actually engaging.
Okay, so that actually triggered a question, and this is kind of like moving more away from the platform per se, and your product, but like getting into sales strategies, because I think that's one of the fundamental things that we're hoping that viewers of and participants in the workshop today, but viewers that are going to be on YouTube watching this in the future, one of the important things, and I just want to kind of put this into perspective, is that we as a consultancy do a lot of work around market access, market strategy. How are you actually going to do it? And medical affairs, and how we're going to be onboarding and training physicians and developing a very long-term strategy about engagement with them becomes very, very important. But engagement has to be, I think, in our perspective, meeting that physician, meeting that target, where they want to be met. Per se. And so, there was the traditional method that many people had done for decades, where, you just illustrated that, Paul, by showing up in the office, showing up in the hospital to meet with them, to talk about whatever it is that they're doing. But now in the move towards digital, not all physicians necessarily would appreciate that. Like, for example, I'm doing mentoring work for a startup that has a device to measure male fertility, and their target audience is going to be urologists in the U.S. And their kind of go to value or go to market proposition is that our device is relatively affordable. You could put it in your office. You don't need to have it in a lab. You can start doing basically frontline fertility tests and be able to charge a very decent amount for it and get a pretty high margin off of it. But more importantly, you're able to short cycle the whole process of fertility treatment by weeks to months and kind of get to the answer of what are we actually dealing with. So better solution, better time to market, and profit center for urologists so that they're not just referring that out to a lab per se. So what they're looking to do is they want to obviously talk to urologists. And so on their advisory team, in a recent meeting that we had some weeks ago, the key influencers that they recruited to be part of their advisory council were very clear in saying, like, we don't want people coming to our office that much anymore because we don't have time, and when we spend a half an hour with the sales rep, we're not billing for that half an hour with the patient. And they're like, the anecdote I have taken away is like, how can we be met more in the digital space so that we can consume the information you're presenting to us when we're ready and then engage with you back? So how is that affecting kind of like, sales professionals in the medical space? What's your kind of opinion on that?
So I think especially the pandemic really kicked off a move towards more digital channels because it was just not possible for sales reps anymore to walk into the hospitals on a daily basis. So they had to become more creative in engaging with physicians. And my understanding nowadays is that both exist and both coexist. The physical meetups, but also the digital connections. It's often purposefully built in cadences, where you might want to have a first touch point, and let's quickly do that. You could type in here urology physician and then search for the ones who are on LinkedIn, and then you can jump into one of those people, quickly go to this page, and then check out his LinkedIn profile within a few seconds. So that's how you use our platform to quickly find urologists on LinkedIn and then use that for campaign targeted on LinkedIn, for example. And then what we're also seeing is that this omni-channel approach, which has been already established in other industries 10 years ago in retail, for example, is now also being more and more used in the healthcare sector, in the medical market, where, as I was mentioning, sales and marketing teams try to create several touch points. Maybe it's an office visit with a quick demo, but it's also connecting with potential targets on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, and so on, creating some touch points there, meeting at a convention, at a show, inviting to a dinner, doing the webinar as we are doing today, to engage providers, and having a well-rounded strategy which brings together all those pillars. I think it's like is one of the factors of success. And within digital engagement channels, I mean, there's a whole rainbow of different ways of actually doing that. It's not only adding someone and then sending them a cold message on LinkedIn, but it's also regularly engaging with their content, for example, before you actually reach out to them initially, and creating a few touch points where they have already read your name a few times, and then they're much more likely to respond once you reach out to them via a direct message or send them an email or give them a call at some point. And even, I mean, a lot of people are currently experimenting with sending out videos on LinkedIn, for example, and some are seeing higher engagement rates for that. So there's a constant stream of different subtypes of how digital channels are being utilized for medical sales teams.
Yeah, and it feels like to me that because what triggered the comment was the territory management that you got. I mean, just because you have territory management doesn't necessarily mean you have to physically be there to have the territory, but having your logical way of grouping together which salespeople are going to be dealing with which clients per se. but still, it's the move to, on demand marketing, if you would, rather than real time marketing or push marketing. I very much see, and I hear that with the colleagues and the medical professionals that I'm speaking with. It's like when they want to be made aware of cool stuff when it's there, but they won't have the time necessarily to go deep into it until they know that they're going to need that. And so kind of teasing that out of where they're active and what they're doing, I think is a really cool kind of an approach for that.
Maybe let me ask you one question to you, Romy and Daniel. I think you've also been using the platform for quite some time now, and I would be interested how you are integrating that platform into your projects at Digital Health Works.
Romy, you want to?
Yeah,
start?
absolutely. This is something we've been using for almost a year now, a little over 9 months. And to be honest, at Digital Health Works, as Daniel was saying, we really focus on building commercialization strategies and figuring out if the healthcare technologies or the medical device that our clients have fits in the US market or fits in their target market, and making sure that it makes sense for the users, for those who are going to be paying for it. So really making sure that there's value behind that innovation, and then being able to strategize market access and kind of market entry for them. And being able to use the Alpha-Sophia, we've just been able to have so much more of a tangible view of the actual market and what's really available to us online. So I'm just thinking of a recent respiratory device company, startup based out of Boston, looking to enter the US. So they've got time until they get their FDA approval through, but they're already starting to build up their market access strategy, and just being able to research. We don't have a reimbursement strategy in place yet, but we have a few of codes that we're looking at that could be applicable to the technology, but there's still some design things that could change. But we're able to, research those CPT codes to see exactly how many physicians billed for that code in the past year, what the average charge was per procedure. So it's really giving us very, very direct information of, even the trend that the billing of that procedure is increasing year on year. We can see how it performed. I think it's in the past, like at least 3 or 5 years, Paul. I'm not sure if that's correct. But we're able to definitely see. Sorry, yeah.
I think we have Medicare data for the last 10 years and all payer claims data for the last 6 years of 5 years, since 2018.
Yes, just being able to also see that trend, use those numbers for some of the decks that the team was then presenting to investors. It's very, very hands-on. And then you can further filter out. Like we were looking for physicians who were affiliated to the American Thoracic Society. And so you then suddenly go from 75,000 physicians who've billed the code you're looking for down to, a couple hundred. And so then it's a much more manageable. You can then further filter out through their socials or trying to figure out who would really be a good target. And so it's been extremely valuable. And I think as someone who's worked in medical affairs and been in the field as a medical science liaison, what you're really trying to do is understand your target physician as much as possible, because you don't want to waste their time. Especially in critical care settings or most physicians are always pressed for time. So you're trying to learn as much about them as possible to make sure that you can approach them in a way that's going to be useful, and that's going to be beneficial for both parties, because you obviously your end goal, or the company's end goal, is to sell the technology, but you're also wanting to, make something useful, improve the patient care. And if you're able to have more information about how to do that and how to approach and engage with the physicians in a way that they're wanting you to, then it's so valuable for everyone involved, and not only on time, but just on the quality of the outreach.
Yeah. And I could kind of follow that up with another example. This is a bit more has to do with radiology, to be specific. So one of the things is we do a lot of work in the radiology AI space, and a quick tutorial for those who aren't familiar with it. This market is maturing quickly, I think is a good way of putting it. And there's publishers of AI model. There's distributors that have integrated with PAC systems in certain hospital systems. And then there's the target users, which are the radiologists, the surgeons, the physicians who are having to interpret, read, and then deploy conclusions from radiology imaging towards the patient care path, if you would. So the challenge in this marketplace that I see, and this is not just to one model, it's to many models, is that it's not about the publishers don't have to sell to the hospital because the hospital's already prescribed and signed exclusive contracts to distributors. The challenge for the publishers, those that make the AI models, is that they need to communicate to the members of the hospital, their staff radiologists, their staff surgeons, their affiliates that have access to the radiology platforms, that their model is available to them through their PAC system. So this is not common yet, but it's clearly it's happening now, and the strategies I'm seeing with some of the forward leaders in the space. But the model would go like